Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Rock and Roll Brunch podcast, episode number 23. Today we are talking about Are the 2000s Back? Also, also the new one from Gregor Barnett. All that, plus so much more, all on today's show.
Nice job landing the name. I feel like that would have stumbled me.
Dude, I've called him Greg Barnett literally for a decade.
Well,
It's not his name.
No, so when I was looking up the album, I was like,
it was
who the fuck
Igor.
who the fuck is Gregor Barnett? And I'm like, oh no, this is him. Okay, never mind. Like it threw me off big time.
Well, I read in one of the articles for the record that I think he records under Greg Barnett under the Menzingers, and then went under Gregor Barnett for this.
Yeah, it makes sense that he'd do something like that, but it threw me off.
Makes sense.
Makes sense.
Makes sense. What the dog doing?
This episode's already getting a little weird.
It's getting a little loose.
There's a guy online who he's a character, and all he does is like react to videos, but he reacts like a Texas oil baron. So he goes like somebody will talk.
This guy.
Somebody will talk and be like, "Yeah, here I am," and he's like, "Makes sense." And then somebody does something weird, and he goes, "What?" And that's the whole thing, front to back, and I love it.
That's how you know he's a Texas oil baron.
Yep. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Rock and Roll Brunch podcast. I was going to say the show. Welcome back. My name is Josh Marcanti. I'll be your host for today's festivities. With me, as always, are two brunch boys, Mr. Dane Train Urbach. Dane, how are you this morning?
Waking up.
Waking up.
Still waking up.
Before you go. Also with me is Mr. Chris Marcanti. Chris, welcome to the show.
I want you to know that editing out from the fact that you didn't stop your sentence into the introduction, it'll be fun.
No, I want
rolling.
you keep it all.
Oh.
It all stays.
Dude, we start this episode with the conversation on Greg Barnett's name. And just
That's
roll
fair.
from there, including all the oil baron stuff.
It all stays.
Yep.
Chris, it all stays, buddy.
It keeps our show real.
It all
Yeah,
stays.
that is true. It keeps us more down to earth looking.
I think so.
Yeah.
Maybe a
All
little-
the oil.
Maybe
A
what?
little ridiculous too.
All the oil baron stuff, keep it.
I just want people. I just
What?
want. I want what? And then he'll do another one where like
Here he goes again.
a dog is doing something weird, which just plays right to my heart. So the dog's doing something weird, and he goes, "What the dog doing?" And like, that's it. And I love it. So now when my dogs are doing something weird, you'll hear me go, "What the dog doing?" And that's it.
Good.
You know, guys, this morning, did you ever make your coffee really weak, like on accident?
I made mine really strong by accident yesterday.
I made mine so weak this morning. It's kind of
How do you do it by accident?
I don't
Or,
know.
make it strong by accident.
Oh,
There's a button on my coffee maker that says bold, and it must have
Oh.
reset because
That's the one I always hit.
I always have it on bold.
no, I have it on regular because I put a lot of coffee into the basket. So
Oh,
bold
no,
is
you
like
really-
bold.
Yeah, bold book. Yeah.
Bold is like coffee syrup. Think about that.
That's a gross. Yeah. Welcome back to the show. You know, it's been a hot minute. We had a couple of scheduling snafus, I think there.
Snafu. Yeah.
One of those weeks was my week. It was like Saturday, and I was like, "Hold on, the show's tomorrow. I got to get my life together, boys. Let's postpone, postpone."
I gotta get my life together.
For real. And then the other morning, Chris, you want to tell? Oh no, Chris, you want to tell the people what?
Clap again or something, so I have something to line it up to. There you go.
There we go.
Just a small bout of stomach flu from my daughter. Yeah.
Chris, we roll over at 4:45 in the morning. Chris goes, Go back to bed, boys.
Yeah,
I tried.
Go back to bed.
it was my biggest nightmare ever. Is waking up and seeing like, no, we're not doing it, and then texting like, wait, what? Is everything okay? What's going on? Not getting a message back.
Yeah.
Being like,
Yeah,
this is my nightmare.
Dane, you know what, Dane? Honestly, you saved the day. I forgot to mention this. How you saved the day? You were like, he's not going to respond to this, so I'm just going to follow the first step. And then I go, well, Thane's following the first step. I'm following the first step, which is go back to bed.
Yeah, I was pretty clear on the directions. It wasn't gonna happen. I had just cleaned vomit off of myself, and it was like, I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna try and get some.
There was also a spelling error in there that made me feel just enough like, am I misreading this? You know, like my 4:45 in the morning brain was like,
100%.
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was like. Meh. But here we are, 2
Here we
weeks
are.
later.
You had gone. You went back to sleep.
I did. I sure did.
It was lovely. Dane, what you been listening to, buddy?
I have been listening to a whole bunch of things.
I bet.
In the past several weeks. I've been going back to this record by this band called Dream Tigers.
I saw you. I actually checked them out based on your based on your listenings.
Why does that sound so familiar? Did we do a review or something back in the day?
I don't think so.
I think of like Tiger's Jaw, Chris.
I know of Tiger Shop, but I was thinking of Dream Tigers.
No, this is another band, and the guys from the band are like in other bands, like Caspian and stuff like that, and a few others. And I don't know, it's just sort of. Remember, we were talking earlier about how February is sort of one of those months where nothing good is happening, and it's kind of boring. There's nothing to look forward to. I think it kind of captures my mood. It's just sort of like. They released it on, oh darn it, what record label? It's on the tip of my tongue. Skeletal Lightning, I think. So kind of a cool Midwestern-y emo sort of label, but it's not really that genre at all. And I've been digging it. I've been listening to a lot of Frank Turner. I think that his new record is one of my favorites that he's released. And but then there's this band. I wanted to share this band called Be Well with you guys. Have you ever heard of them?
I saw you listening to them. I've listened to that record before. I don't
Me
know.
too.
I thought you recommended it
a while back, right?
Yeah.
Because it came out like I remember listening to it in my classroom by myself while I was teaching on Zoom. So I think it came out like a couple of years ago or maybe last year or something.
It came out in 2020. Yeah.
Okay. It's got the guy. His name's Brian McTiernan, I think.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I really hope that I'm getting some of this info right.
What do I know him from?
He's a pretty well-known producer.
Yeah, he produced Illusion of Safety and
Strike Anywhere, I think, is on that list. And
yeah.
He's got a really awesome sort of like punk sound, and he's the singer of that band. And I think when I first started listening to it, I was like, oh, this is pretty good. And I don't know, something about like a couple days ago, I came back to it because they're touring with Hot Water Music. And I was like, I'm gonna give this one a shot again, and it's clicking with me.
Is it the weight in the cost?
Yeah, it's a really interesting record, and it's on Equal Vision, and it's sort of like a faster punk record, but not really anything like that at all. It's really hard to explain, so it's worth a listen, and it's worth sticking with it if it doesn't click right away.
Cool.
Am I the only one that still associates like Equal Vision's only a Coheed and Cambria record label? I know they're not, and I always get pleasantly surprised when I see albums that come out from Equal Vision that are like rad records. But
it's worth trying, like clicking on their Bandcamp and trying some new bands. There are some bands in there you're like, oh, they're not like a pop punky like post-hardcore band, like with lots of like riffing going on. There's something else there. There's some really amazing albums on there, and by like some of their like back catalog, smaller bands that maybe didn't break through.
Yeah.
Awesome. Chris, what about you? What you been listening to, buddy?
Definitely the new Frank Turner record for sure. The Dan Andriano record, Dear Darkness. That is just like a time and place record for me. There's just something about. I've always loved his voice, but these songs that were like clearly acoustic songs that got put in front of a band to like flesh out to bigger stuff. I don't know. They're just very awesome. Those are
nice.
Top of the charts.
We talked a little bit about this in our chat, but I thought Frank. We all love Frank Turner, and I was like, I actually don't think it'd be good for this show because I thought we would all kind of universally like it, and I think that that is the case. I am also just like it's probably one of my favorites so far. I don't know where it ranks in the tier list for me, but You guys hearing like a high pitched tweet?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely hear.
I wonder who's and that's on.
I
Weird.
don't hear anything.
Yeah, there it is. It's very squeaky.
I heard it too. Everyone wiggle a little bit. I don't know. I hear something.
I did hear it sound squeaky.
It's entirely possible that it's in my room, but I don't have monitors
Is it that-
in my ears. It
have
could
a
be the
bat?
furnace, like right next to my.
Oh, well, whatever. And then the only other one that I wanted to mention was one of my favorite bands, Knuckle Puck, released a new EP, Disposable Life. I will listen to anything and everything those guys put out.
Yeah.
So
They are like good quintessential Chicago, like punk rock.
yeah, I mean, their last record, 2020, I loved. The one before that, I loved even more. So I'm a big fan of theirs, and I want to see another full record from those guys. But anyway, all right. Well, with all that out of the way, all the formalities out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the meat of the show today, which is actually going to be brought to us by the good folks at altpress.com. This one are the 2000.
I always think you're gonna like mention an advertiser or something like brought to us by the good people at PC and Bank or whatever. I don't know. Like,
listen, if Manscaped or Postmates or
Casper,
Squarespace,
Purple,
if any of those guys want to hit me, absolutely Tushy. That's a free advertisement, everybody. Look at Dane.
Josh loves.
you know what? I don't even want to know what.
You don't know what
Josh
Tushy is?
loves
It's
his
not.
bidet.
It's not as sexual as you think, Dane. Tushy is
It can be.
Tushy, the new way to experience pooping. It's a
Is
bidet.
that the ad? That's a bidet.
It's a bidet. No, it's not the ad. It's Josh's ad. Anyway, if any one of those people want to hit me up, find me. Find me. Give me some of that. Give me some of that cheddar.
Get that tushy money.
Want to get that bags? I would love some Tushy money.
I'm not below the tushy money.
Nope.
Above the tushy money.
Alt Press brought us this one. Are the 2000s back? How Avril Lavigne, Chris Carrabba are uniting Gen Z and millennials. First off, when's the last time you guys kind of like checked in with Alt Press? Do you guys like follow Alt Press very much?
No.
It made me feel very like, oh, it's 2005, but I suppose they probably cover a lot of the stuff that I would find interesting.
I think now again it's been a while, but I've always had this back and forth where like sometimes they'll cover something really interesting, but most of the time they're pandering to their audience.
Sure.
And I'm just not that audience anymore.
Sure.
So like I don't know. I kind of feel like that's one of their problems is like they're trying to find like even this article is trying to pander to a particular audience.
Yes, very clearly.
Very hard for me to.
But you know what? Now that what's interesting about it is like I wonder if there's going to be some sort of alt press resurgence given pop punk's resurgence.
Given the article, which
does that mean in like 3 years Warped Tour is going to come back?
please,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to go though. I wouldn't go.
I went to the original Warped Tour.
I wouldn't go. It's in the article. It said now Gen Z could possibly be doing the Y2K thing in the runway. Just possibly, they might even be doing it better than millennials ever did. The tectonic shift seems to be happening in 2022. The political consciousness, respect equally touted during the early 2000s, have the potential to be fully realized. Are the 2000s back? Chris says yes. Dane says.
I say yes, but I'm shaking my head for all kinds of other reasons.
I don't.
That article.
Yeah, well, I know it was very like
cringing.
yes, it was very like rose-colored glasses about the 2000s, like it was some high,
Could we make a list of socially conscious bands from the 2000s? I'd love to. Avril Lavigne wasn't on that list.
Let's do
Dashboard.
I was gonna say, let's do 3 politically conscious bands that are making a comeback in the 2000s.
From the 2000s.
From the 2000s that are making a comeback now. There you go. Exactly.
I mean, honestly, but Bad Religion is still making records. Strike Anywhere put out a new album. Like,
Anti-Flag propaganda.
Anti-Flag's
record was
putting out
great.
good records. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, they're good records too. Like some of these legacy, but that it also destroys the point that like
This is what I'm
Oh,
saying.
amazing.
it's
Yeah.
never went away. It's not bad.
This is
I don't know.
Well, and that's kind of the thing that like I feel like anybody who's been paying attention to the genres, whatever that these people are discussing, have would say that it never went anywhere. I mean, like some of the best pop punk records have been put out in the past 10 years, not in 2022 per se. So that's why I kind of have this fundamental problem. It's like I would say that some of my favorite records, some of the best punk, some of the best records that people would consider genre defining have come out in the past 10 years. Not this past year. But maybe I'm looking at it from the music perspective, and maybe that's not correct.
I think you're also looking at it from the old guy perspective, where like you happen to be around in the 2000s when these albums were coming out, and now that has cycled its way back through.
But also,
it's easy
there,
to go like, yeah.
I don't know. I feel like being there though gives you the context to see like at the time, like people who were into pop punk didn't see Avril Lavigne as a pop punk musician or like Good Charlotte or
right now
like
at the time I know we
No,
definitely saw them as like sellout,
or like
corporate whatever
pop bands, pop artists who are co-opting a sound, on a major label. I don't know, like
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, we're saying the same
know.
thing. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I'm just working us into a weird tangle before we even get into the subject.
The one thing that I would say, like, I don't know if maybe the music portion of it is not back. Like to me, it never really left, because maybe to Chris's point, I'm the old man, but like the political consciousness, respect, and equality, man, I don't define that era as like particularly respectful and
I love the idea that the person that's out front of the resurgence of pop punk, holding the respect, equality, and consciousness, is Machine Gun Kelly. That makes me laugh in a lot of different ways.
I saw a video of him fighting somebody at the airport the other day. It was pretty funny.
Josh, your relationship with videos on the internet is fascinating to me.
Dane,
Everyone agrees. Everyone agrees with this.
Not wrong.
My wife the other day, she's like, "What's going on the internet with you?" And I'm like,
what blows my mind is like the things that find their way into your stream.
I know.
Way that is that. How did they get there?
I know.
How did they get?
And then they got me on the algorithm. They're like, the cover is Machine Gun Kelly, and he looks angry, and I'm like, well, play that. Yeah, I'm gonna watch that.
I'm gonna watch that. Obviously.
Yeah. My question to you guys: did you feel like we were like the 2000s were definitely like our teenage years? Do you feel like we were particularly conscious of political correctness and equality and stuff like that? Do you feel like that? Chris is shaking his head.
This is gonna make me just so mad.
No, go for it.
I like don't even want to. Well, of course, like yes and no. You know what I mean? I think it was such a like the version of equality and societal consciousness that was around in the early 2000s is like, we were all cognizant of it, but like it's so much different now that you have to be afraid of so many more things. Like there are so many different things that you have to be worried about saying or doing or looking like or sounding like or whatever today than there ever was back in the 2000s. And so like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Could you, put out a song today about like meeting a girl at a rock show and like getting drunk and fooling around and stuff like that? Or would people
be like, oh my God, you're a
cancel you because you sexually assaulted some girl? Like just the idea of the things that you can and can't talk about today versus then. Like, I think there's always going to be the heartache shit that people want to, that'll always drive music, but is it socially conscious? I don't know. I like of course we were. People were protective of one another. Like, we talk about this all the time. You go to like a Bad Religion show, and the amount of booths that are in the hallway of like protecting girls and, women at shows and, PETA and all this other stuff, that doesn't really exist anymore at shows. But the amount of call out stuff that happens far more
online on a daily basis.
Yeah, it happens far more. The question is like whether or not one is better than the other or more woke than the other. I don't know. Like, it's just so aggravating.
You'd like to think that like the next generation of punks, takes that equality thing that the 80s punks and 70s punks did and pushes it forward even, more than we did or whatever. But to your point, I don't know. Dane, do you feel like that? Like,
I would love Dane's perspective, especially as like a high school teacher.
That's what I'm saying. Like, as a person who interacts with youths, that they're more politically conscious than we were as teenagers.
I also want you to know that I generally take whatever you say about the
gospel.
Like,
yeah,
I don't know that I got it
extrapolate
right.
out to the rest of the world, because you're the only person I know with
man on the street.
Yeah, totally. Literally has a
pulse for the teens.
Pulse. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Well,
Also, don't say that.
No. Has what is the? Oh, you know what I mean.
He's got a pulse for the teens.
Finger on the pulse. Finger on the pulse. Man on the street. Dane Erbach. Dane.
I don't know if I got it right. You know what I mean? Excuse me.
Long COVID.
Yeah, I know. I will say that, Chris, what you felt as was a socially conscious experience at shows when we were kids. Like, did you when you were in your like high school bands and stuff? Didn't you guys play like Food Not Bombs benefits and stuff like that? Like,
yeah, of course.
Just being part of our local scene felt like it was a political decision sometimes, and we were actively walking around wearing like anti-Nazi and like.
I think
anti-racist like stuff, and
I think our biggest thing too was like the war at the time, and like I felt like
and all that.
Like NoFX War on Terrorism came out, and I was like,
and Not My President.
Fuck
kind
you,
of
George
stuff,
Bush.
Yeah. Chris, or Josh, were you the one with the Not My President shirt?
I definitely had that one.
Okay, I was gonna say I had one or two friends with one, and I'm almost positive it was you. Like, I kind of feel like during that time, being tapped into like a punk music scene, like opened your eyes to a lot of politics and stuff, and so I think that's good. I feel like, but I agree. I feel like a song, like I pick a Dashboard song from like 2001, and it's probably what made it emo is not what is not politically woke. You know what I mean? Like political bands are a whole different branch of, listening to an Against All Authority album is what you did, or a propaganda album is what you did when you wanted your, a little bit of politics in your music.
That's why I like when this article is talking about Chris Scrabin, I don't have anything against him, but I don't particularly associate him with anything that leans towards like equality. But that aside,
now that being said, right, I think my students are not necessarily more politically conscious. I think that.
Are they hold on a second, because are they socially conscious? Like, they don't give. I mean,
no.
You teach in McHenry.
I mean, half of my students will
they're all just
intentionally say racist things to try to provoke the woke students.
Jesus.
Like, let's be real. Like, that's kind of a political reality right now. So if we're talking about how they're a little more politically conscious than they used to be, yeah, in that way. But then there's this other side.
Trying to, what do they call it? Like, trigger the snowflakes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
But then there's this other side of people who I think would identify as politically aware, but their political and social awareness is really limited. They'll come off like these really passionate people about certain issues, but not always know what the heck they're talking about. So it's just a lot of being upset and not really understanding that, it's like a lot of being upset about like the school's not doing enough to support people with like different gender identities, and then sort of saying, okay, like, what should they do, and then not having any ideas. you know, or saying like, well, but at least you don't live in Florida, and they're like, what's going on in Florida? And you're like, or they'll know what's going on in Florida, but they'll just know the "Don't Say Gay" bill. You know, that was, I think it was
Right.
passed in the one of the
House.
yeah, the House.
Last week, yeah.
And like, in other words, it's like they'll pick something up from I mean, and I hate to, not all of my students are like that. Especially some of my newspaper kids, for example, are totally finger on the pulse, like you said, Josh. They're keeping up with things. It impacts them. They want to know. But a lot of kids,
But like
just,
overall,
like they'll swipe through a TikTok video. Like they'll get halfway through a TikTok video where somebody is saying something about Ukraine, and they'll feel like they've been enlightened, and that they feel, and then they're walking around the rest of the day talking about how there's going to be a draft, and I'm like, I don't think you know what you're talking about here.
so kids,
Like,
so kids are dumb.
I was gonna say they sound like high school students.
yes.
That sounds like a bunch
well,
of dumb.
I mean, but it
yeah.
sounds like how I felt in high school too, when I
Oh,
wanted
for
to
sure.
talk about
I-
things.
exact-
You know?
It like
Same.
literally the exact same thing where we had
So-
an article and I was like,
I
I'm
remember. I
anti-woke.
vividly remember in high school that like it was all the George Bush years or whatever, and then I found a book at Barnes and or Borders or whatever, and that it was like about money in the war, and I was like, I'm gonna read this and I'm gonna be informed.
Guess what,
And like,
Dad?
I never touched the book. And like, just a funny thing.
It took me all of college to feel like, and then it took me all of college to feel like I was comfortable with my political identity, and then in the years after college, like actually being a consumer of news and not just saying "Meh, mainstream media."
Do you
want
wanna
to
take the-
lamestream media?
now that
you
you're
know?
a full adult who's been comfortable with his political identity, do you want to tell the listeners how you're far right wing and do not believe it?
I
You're
mean,
in a
like,
safe. You're in a Dane. You're in a safe place.
So
Buddy would
yesterday,
never do
But
when
it.
I
it's
was
fine.
listening to Joe
and
Rogan,
by the way, I don't judge you. It's
No.
fine. It's fine.
No.
You know, there's.
We're
I
friends,
think
yeah.
there is some truth to believe that like Hillary was, like had a pizza.
lizard.
Like I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. I think you're insane, but but also you're in a safe space.
I honestly think Putin. No, I'm not going to say. I'm not going to finish
No,
that sentence at all.
no.
I just want to return really quickly. I know I'm talking too much like I always do, but the article is really flawed in this way. It like really irritates me because
So-
it's fine for me. It's fine to make this argument that like pop punk is back, even though it may not have ever gone anywhere, even though the best pop punk records came out in the last decade, just like you said, Josh. I think, but I also think that like, and I'm even ignoring the first paragraph, the lead right now that
Right.
mentions Lil Peep. You know what I mean? I'm just letting that one slide.
I blew that one right. Yeah.
I just think that when it says things like there are more queer and people of color artists in pop punk, part of me is like, if we're holding up Machine Gun Kelly and Travis Barker as these people that are ushering, and Avril Lavigne and
Mod
as
Sun.
people who are ushering pop punk back, that doesn't seem true. They
I
don't
agree.
list a single queer person of color anywhere in this article like that's bringing punk back. And I also think that like I don't think Machine Gun Kelly's music is politically interesting. I don't think any of those pop like punk artists that are coming back. I had to separate those two. I even was thinking about Willow again, because I kind of like that one song by Willow
Agreed.
that we talked about.
Yep.
And I've looked back at Willow's music since, and I'm like, there's nothing really here that feels politically like interesting. And so one conclusion I think that's worth coming to is yes, pop punk is back in the same way that it was before, in that it is kind of vapid and trying to co-opt pop music. It's pop musicians trying to co-opt punk music to sell more records for major labels. It's the same as 2000.
I guess so. And that was going to be my question. Is there anything in the article that like you do agree with? And I think you answered that, which is they are back. Chris, you were about to say something. I interrupted
I was
you.
about to say, do you feel like in the 2000s, emo was not Now here's the thing. Emo was not an endearing label. It was not endearing to be called emo.
No.
But today it's like a badge of honor. Where
Well,
like
that-
and so hold on a second, because I think I want to make sure that like maybe not the women in color or people of color and women and things like that in the genre.
Oh, boy.
But would you say that like I think zeroing in on Chris Carrabba, which is like he's emo, right? He's a guy that's singing about his emotions and unsteadiness and maybe anxiety and all of these different things. And people are attaching to that more maybe than like remove the social conscious thing and take on the kids feel more anxious and more depressed and all of these different things. And the emo side of pop punk, they're seeing themselves represented in that more than they would have in the early 2000s, where it was Good Charlotte, it was Blink-182, it was like these really big pop punk bands that weren't saying anything about anything. And now at least they're saying things about how sad they are, or depressed they are, or upset they are, and people are identifying that piece of it. Remove the social conscious thing. If you're just zeroing in on like depression, anxiety, and all of these different things as a teenager, do you think that's the piece of this that might be coming through more than it did in the 2000s?
I would say that many of my students would say that just admitting that you're mentally ill or depressed or suffer from anxiety is a political decision, because it makes it more visible in public.
I saw this video of a guy who was like, what it was like being sad as a millennial, and that's like, is sad, and somebody goes like, just go outside, and like as compared to now, somebody goes is sad, and they get a lot more support maybe. My only thing, Chris, to your question though, is like that music's been there. If you felt like a sad boy, music's been there. It's
been there, but now it's okay to be a sad boy. Whereas before, it was not okay to be a sad boy.
Maybe I think I would agree with that too.
Maybe.
I think before we let this go, do you think? No, I have another. Go ahead. I was going to say we should at least talk a little bit about when we were young festivals.
Well, so and that's like, I guess that's where I did a little bit deeper digging. Do you guys know what nostalgia is?
Josh did some investigative research, journalism.
I'm the man on the street for. I got my finger on the pulse.
He just keeps using it.
All right, guys, let me take a drink of finger on the pulse. Nostalgia. Have you guys heard of this phrase?
No. I think so.
I don't think I have.
I don't think we talked about it. Basically, it's referring to like a nostalgia for something that's happening like now. Like so, like and this is kind of how I feel it is right now. Like if we were in high school and had this kind of nostalgia and bring back of an era, the equivalent would be the 80s. And like to us, when we were in high school, the 80s would have felt like forever ago. Mm-hmm. But now it's being celebrated the 2000s, which happened 10 years ago, 15 years ago. You know what I mean? So with that being said, with the nostalgia thing, which I think sounds dumb as shit, but that has brought about some of the When We Were Young festival, the Emo's Not Dead cruise, and then there's another one that just got announced too, right? Wasn't there? There's like another big thing.
I'm sure there is.
Anyway,
nothing's bigger than the We Were Young festival.
I would think that would be the biggest indicator of the 2000s being back, these mega hella humongous festivals that are blowing up the internet. Dane, would you agree with that?
Yeah, except for that I don't think that has anything to do with like Generation Z. I think this is all millennials like
having disposable income now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And being a target demographic, like the same kids that had to borrow their mom's credit card to like go and see some of these bands at the Metro. Some of the people who kind of like carried their beers out like to the front row of the crowd. You know what I mean? I'm sorry if that's insulting, but
that's 100% accurate.
But those people now have like stockbroker jobs. They're like, I don't know, I can go on a cruise and see AFI again. I loved that album, that one song of theirs.
Let's have a weekend in Vegas. All right. Where we're gonna go. Yeah.
So that's why. Yeah. Is the median age of one of those attendees going to be 33 or is it going to be 19?
Oh yeah, and maybe higher than 33 for sure. You know what I mean? Like pushing 40. Let's be honest. Okay. I'm pushing 40.
Are you almost 40?
Yeah.
Are you 40?
Yeah,
no, I'm a couple years away. But you know what I mean? Like I feel like people like just older than me too were the sorts of people who were like the ones that were turning me on to some of the bands that are going to be at that festival, you know?
Wait another 15 years when they have this festival version of bands we've never heard of, and we're just like, you bunch of damn 30-year-olds.
Machine Gun Kelly is headlining this the cruise.
He'll look great in 15 years.
Yeah, he's gonna look. Here's the thing, though. I don't know, but I would imagine that you'd be surprised how many young kids are going to go to that festival.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think the fact that it's in Las Vegas probably hurts their chances because, like, not a lot of parents are going to be like, "Yeah, I'll take you to Vegas." Maybe a lot of them will. I don't know, but I zeroed all the way in on My Chemical Romance. If you believe that it is now okay to be emo and it is celebrated to be emo, boy, those guys are in for the ride.
They are very popular still in high schools.
And if they decide to put out a record and it's half as good as Black Parade or as good as Danger Days or whatever, like, well, they're gonna see the next ride of their career.
What's interesting, Chris, is if there's a lot of young people at those festivals, they would be celebrating, like, they're not celebrating any of their new music. They would be only celebrating the bands as they were in, like, the 2000s. So they'd be celebrating music that came out when they were babies.
I hear you. I wonder
that's like us going, like, in being teenagers, going to like an 80s revival thing and being like, yeah. It seems silly.
There's something to be interesting to be said about, like, whether or not music ages slower because of the internet. You know what I mean? Where, like,
now you're onto something.
The idea that, like, when Black Parade came out, if it was only on CD or something, like, that only exists now in, like, a 5-cent bin somewhere. But the fact that people like My Chemical Romance can headline this festival and they go, well, I'll go check out Black Parade, and it doesn't sound like an album that came out in the
really
50s, 60s, or 70s. It sounds like it's a modern album. Like, if it just doesn't, if it ages slower, and so people, like, its life, if it finds a long-term life cycle, its long-term life cycle is far longer than, like, Paradise City or whatever. Some Guns N' Roses.
By the way, I think that's a fantastic point. I think that's something we can close on. Is that, that's something to take home and think about.
Are we going to We Were Young Festival and doing it on the street?
I'm going. I'm gonna
reporter segment. Josh, see if you get a press badge.
Yeah, I got one.
See if you get a press badge.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to say is I started listening. We did ourselves a disservice because the Avril Lavigne and the Dashboard Confessional albums came out on Friday, and I'm sure you guys haven't listened to them. But I started listening to the Avril Lavigne one just because I was like, what? And first of all, it's
what's that dog doing?
What the dog doing?
It is super, super pop punky. To all of the people that you'd imagine are featured on the album, like Machine Gun Kelly and Mark Hoppus. Travis Barker drums the entire thing.
Tim Armstrong?
Is he on it?
No.
Oh,
I don't think so.
That would be cool.
Guys, there was such a long pause. I thought my internet skipped. I was like, oh no, I dropped internet. You guys were just
Would that be? I think that'd be cool.
Tim Armstrong? That would be cool.
No.
And it's out on Travis Barker's record label. So to tie back all the way to the theme of, like, Travis Barker's he's got a chain and he's just ever so slowly carrying this boulder up the hill. I think this takes that to the next
Thank you,
level.
Travis Barker. That is going to lead us straight into our record review for today. This one going to be the first solo record from Gregor Barnett. Don't go throwing roses in my grave. I'm going to start with Chris on this one.
Do it.
For sure. It's funny, Dane, you didn't know this, you wouldn't know this, but now I'm going to tell you, and listeners. I was listening to one of the playlists that we follow, and one of his songs came up, and I texted this to Chris where I was like, one of his songs came up, I was like, oh, this is so good. And I was like, why do I know this so much? And then I looked into it, and I was like, oh, I'm an idiot. And I sent that to Chris, and he's like, yeah, you're an idiot. How did you feel about that?
That's a story about you being an idiot.
Yeah, for sure. How like I didn't even realize this was coming out. I didn't I didn't know that
I barely realized it was coming out either.
I didn't know he had like a
Snuck up on me.
solo effort, but then but I also knew that like I instantly recognized it as something I already liked. So I'm curious to see how that kind of landed for you, Chris.
Yeah, there are definitely songs on here that feel deliberately not Menzingers. And then there are songs on here that feel like Driving Through the Night is definitely a Menzinger song. Like the first Dead Body I ever saw is one of those and Don't Go Throwing Roses in My Grave. Those are both songs that you're like, oh, it's almost a style of music that like doesn't normally appeal to me, but for some reason especially like around the bridges of all of these songs, they all take like this much bigger step up in like what's happening in the song, and that makes it like super appealing to me. But I thoroughly enjoyed this record. I think it's like a great second or first gear album where you're like, I just need something on Sunday morning to throw on. I'll definitely pick it up on vinyl, I think.
That might be a nice vinyl record, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure probably Dane already has.
No, not
but
yet.
Oh Lord, What Do You Know? Like the album just starts off on like it starts off on one of those not Menzinger notes, and then it just keeps stepping up. It keeps stepping up with like the background vocals and stuff like that. The only thing I'd say is like I from a lyric standpoint, I was like, I don't know if Gregor Barnett is a great lyricist. But anyway, outside of that, musically, I loved the album. I thought it was fantastic. Favorite song on the album would have to be Driving Through the Night. I have a soft spot for when people take choruses, like they take one word on a chorus and then like make an entire melody out of it, like an entire hook.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Chris watching Brunch busts out that acoustic, buddy, and
Got a couple of them down here. Anyway, that's my
cool.
My quick 90 seconds.
Did you? I know you're tell me where you're at with Menzingers first before I ask this question.
I feel like I'm a bandwagon Menzingers person because like I came on with After the Party and I've held on ever since, and I've never really gone backwards except we covered I Don't Want to Be an Asshole, and so like I've dipped my toe backwards, but I know there's amazing stuff hanging out back there, and I just haven't taken the time to go do it. That makes me feel like a bandwagon Menzingers fan.
But the question would be like, where do the Menzingers sit for you? And does this record kind of, was it like what you were hoping for out of a guy from the Menzingers, being, the level of fan you are? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's a great question.
Yeah.
I think so. It expanded my appreciation for the Menzingers.
Okay, that's a good answer. Yeah. Because the reason I ask is because that's kind of the perspective anybody I think would inevitably take or does take when someone steps out and does a solo thing. You're like, well, how does this kind of sit in the arc of where they
sometimes
are?
People that do solo things are just like the shittier.
That's what I'm saying.
Person in the band that writes songs.
The generic version.
I think he's an amazing songwriter. I mean, these songs are really layered and like wonderful and delightful in that like they keep changing on you but make the songs bigger and stuff like that. It made me I definitely appreciate the Menzingers more.
Cool. Dane, what about you? Where does this one sit for you? How do what do you think about his first solo effort?
I'll piggyback on some of the things that Chris says. I overall really like it.
I want to see that. I want to see you piggyback actually, Chris.
You would.
I'm dying.
I feel a little. I feel like the conversation I was having in my head when I was listening to this record was a lot about solo albums and solo artists.
This is for sure.
And I kind of came to the conclusion that if you're someone in a reasonably well-known band and you put out a solo album, it's got to be both totally distinct from your other band, stylistically, because otherwise those songs should just go to the band, right? But also shouldn't feel like a stylistic left field.
I couldn't agree more.
And so my least favorite songs on this album are the ones that feel like Menzinger songs, because they just, to me, feel like, well, this should just be on the next Menzinger's record. Now, I like all of the songs. Driving Through the Night is a great song, but it's the one that I'm least interested in on this album.
I can agree with that.
And it's not because it's a bad song. It's just sort of been like, to me, it's like, put it on the next Menzinger's record, you know? My favorite songs are the ones where he really leans into the Americana thing. I really like the song Talking to Your Tombstone. Like, that song to me felt...
That's a great song.
Yeah, it just felt like a good rambly kind of song. Like, that couldn't be a Menzinger song, right? I really like The First Dead Body I Ever Saw because it's got this sort of spooky Roy Orbison kind of thing going on with it. Like, he's got this quality to his voice that feels a little like, I don't know, like that could be like a weird 80s, like, Americana revival song.
And I was genuinely curious if it was true. I was like, are we just writing a cool song, or did this guy see a dead body when he was 13?
Well, and then to speak to the lyrics, like, I kind of feel like the Menzingers' lyrics are always riff on similar topics a few too many times. You know, like one of the jokes for like their earlier records are like, there's a lot of waitresses and there's a lot of cigarettes and there's, you know what I mean? Like, and I don't mind that at all. I do feel like there's a lot of death and a lot of like managing death in this album, which is fine. It's like a thematic thing, right? But I will say that all of these songs kind of have little stories, and I think, and they might be autobiographical, which I think is cool. But they're not the most poetic lyrics. So to Chris's point, I would agree with that. But I did find myself thinking a lot about like the stories that these songs were telling. Like, what is the story of "Don't Go Throwing Roses on My Grave"? You know, what is the story of "Guest in Your House"? And I was thinking a lot about that. If you listen to lyrics of The First Dead Body I Ever Saw, there's like a really interesting kind of like relationship with another person, and the impact of, you know, what it's like to see that person dead. I don't know. I really like this album. But kind of like, you know, we've been talking a lot about Bad Religion today. I feel like we do frequently. Just like Greg Graffin's solo stuff, I feel like that leans in a totally different direction. That's not a complete departure. I kind of liked this in the same way. I just liked the songs. But unlike Greg Graffin, not all of these felt like a departure.
Yeah, Dane, you're like me, where like, you're a big fan of, you know, like Micah Schneebel, for example, from Two Cow Garage.
I love Micah.
You know, Brian Fallon, Dave House, you know, these guys that separate and do their own solo thing.
Oh, shoot. What's the guy's name from I'm the Avalanche? Darn it. Why am I blanking on this? His solo albums are great.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
Why am I blanking on his name, though? It's going to drive me nuts. Hold on. I'll look it up. You keep going.
Yeah. No, you know, in the overarching story of guys who step out from the big bands and do their own solo thing, how do you think that this ranks, you know, in terms of some of those really great efforts? Like, you know, you can almost honestly, you could probably put Brian Fallon at the top of that at the moment. How do you think that it ranks? Like, you know, was it worth the effort for him, in your opinion, to step out like that?
I think so. Yeah. I think it ranks up there.
You think it ranks up there? Okay.
Yeah, I think this is like I would definitely consider buying this record on vinyl, for example, because again, it has this sort of like Sunday afternoon quality. Put it on and just sort of like hang out in your house kind of thing. Like, I've been listening to it a lot while I've been planning for like my classes and stuff like that. In that, if you want to listen to it, you can pull something out of it. If you just want it in the background, it just fills the background. And I feel like a lot of good singer-songwriter albums are like that. By the way, it's Vinny Caruana or whatever.
Yeah, that's
his
what it
name
was.
is.
Yep.
I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name right, but I feel like there's a lot of artists that are like that, and there are some though that I feel like this one though has a couple of moments where if I were helping him produce this record, I would have been like, maybe not that one. Maybe this one would be just like, let's save that for a Menzinger's record. Like, that's my only real complaint. Everything else is really interesting, and I wouldn't call this album fun,
No,
but
I agree with that.
but I definitely
good time.
enjoy it. Yeah.
I mean, all the way down to the album artwork, where it's just like this very dark picture of him looking downward. I think that's probably encapsulates the circumvent.
Circumvent. Yeah, I think for me, I think I was maybe a little less excited than you guys overall, as excited as you guys were. I think, like Dane, and that the reason I asked that question is because I always look at, guys who step out and like how that compares and how it sits on it for me. And I was like, I found myself like just being like, okay, so definitely some great ones. Like the Guest in Your House, like last track, was really great. Took it somewhere, brought it to a different place where I was like, oh, wow. But I found myself like, I don't know. Selfishly, I just want like stripped down versions of Menzingers songs because I'm such a big Menzingers fan. That like if I got a whole record of Driving Through the Night, but it was like a little bit more down from that, I'd been like, hell yeah. But
Oh, that's interesting. You're saying the opposite of what Dane is.
I'm kind of saying the opposite. Yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe then that's a sign of a good album. It kind of hits both kinds of listeners, right?
Yeah.
Well, he said it excited him or got him less excited. He was like,
like I was a little bit cooler on this record than I think both of you
so
guys.
cool.
Dude, I host a podcast, bro. I'm pretty cool. Yeah. Go ahead. What?
No, I said what?
Oh, I thought you were gonna. Oh,
What the dog do?
what the
What the
dog
dog
do?
doing?
Yeah. I
Good
just
on you.
I think I wanted to like it more. I was very excited about it, but I think based on Driving Through the Night, where I was like, yeah, and then the rest of it came out, I was like, meh. So that's maybe my like expectations versus reality kind of thing. Maybe that just means I need to kind of let it sit with me a little bit more. All right, well, good stuff, Chris. For the year, where's this one going to sit for you? I mean, so far, at least looking at like the early part of 2022, where we haven't even seen very much coming out yet. What do you think?
I would be surprised if I was still listening to this by the end of the year.
Yeah.
I think I'll end up like, but but I think it'll hang around for sure. It'll definitely hang around. But I think now what I'll end up being is like a cold winter's day where the sun is out a little bit. That's kind of where it'll always lock into me. So maybe it'll only end up being like a seasonal February, March album.
Dane, what about you?
Exactly the same. I'll listen to this for the rest of the season probably. Something else will move into its place. I'll return to it when it's hitting the right seasonal kind of vibe.
Yeah. I think for me, it's like there are other records in this for this seasonal kind of sour, kind of sad view, and that's not fair. That's not fair of me at all to say. But like, it's not going to be the first thing I reach for. If I really want to go for it, I'm gonna hop on Rented World or something like that, and let's go. Cool. Well, that is actually going to go ahead and do it for this episode 23 of the show.
23.
Episode number 23. I think, boys, we're rapidly approaching episode number 25, which means nothing to anybody, but that's where the first round stopped for us. So we're already hitting that, if you can believe it. Dane, where can people find what you're up to?
Jetsam-flotsam.bandcamp.com is a good place to start.
Check out some good Broken Field Runner songs.
We'll be releasing it next week, so kind of excited.
Be right on time.
There was a and I don't know if maybe it was whoever does your PR. I don't remember his name.
Yeah, his name's Kevin.
Kevin, I follow him on all his things, and like they put it was like a loop of Baby Satan video, and then like 2 or 3 hours later, I was just singing the song, and I was like, "Damn,
Gets in your head."
That is a hooky song, man." And then someone said, maybe he said it was like Jimmy World and all these other bands, and I was like, "Oh shit, that's a really good."
I think it's hard to like compare Broken Field Runner to other albums, other artists. But I think like there are
Not
certain.
that song.
I don't know. I mean, I even think his poppier stuff kind of reminds me of something that's not been done in like precisely in that same kind of pop punk or emo kind of world. But I do think there are parts and moments and syllables here and there that really harken to that kind of that vibe. Hey Mercedes is another one too. So
Anyway, go to jetsam-flotsam.com. today to check out some.
Sorry, you get me talking. I can't stop.
There he goes. The
Yeah,
train is the
there he
day
goes
train has
again.
left the station. Chris, what about you? Chris, what about you? Where can people find what you're up to?
The throwbackchicago.com.
Nice.
If you're in the area, we have a very, very busy next couple of months, and summer, and then fall is starting to wind up to that too. When this comes out, we'll have a show. We'll be playing at Rock House in West.
That day that it drops, we'll be playing.
The day it drops. So if you're listening and you're like, I don't have anything to do tonight, come on out to the Rock House. Yeah.
Cool.
Throwbackchicago.com.
Right on. For me, it's you can keep it creepy. You can keep it right here at Rock and Roll Brunch. You can find the show on Instagram at Rock and Roll Brunch Pod. That's not it, but you'll find it. We're also on YouTube. If you have any questions or if anything you want to bring up, email us.
That's not it, but
you'll find it. You'll find it. You'd find it.
If they're listening, they found it. Maybe.
If you're listening, you've already found it.
Maybe.
Hey, we're doing good on some numbers. Our numbers are going up, so that's very nice. You can also email us at therockandrollbrunch@gmail.com. And for me, for Chris, for Dane, let me go ahead and get that check, please, baby. What the dog doing?